Hey there, fellow songwriter. Jim Femino here. Okay, so if you ask any songwriter friends of yours, what they think about what they're hearing on the radio nowadays, chances are you'll hear them say, I don't listen to the radio. I can't stand the stuff they play on there now. And I could certainly understand why a lot of writers wouldn't want to hear that crap, quote unquote, they play on the radio now because it damn sure isn't what we grew up listening to, and it just doesn't seem to have any soul to it, you know what I mean? The songs seem pretty shallow. I get it. But here's the thing. Believe it or not, if you want to get your songs published and on the radio, then you're going to have to listen to the radio and make peace with it, because if you're not writing what's going to get recorded and played on the radio, no publisher is going to be interested in your songs, no matter how great, you may think they are. So, chances are you join the Songstarters private mentoring group because you want to learn how to get your songs published. And you're smart enough to realize that to get your songs published, recorded by some major label artist or on the radio, you'll need to understand how the music business really works so that you'll know what it is you're actually trying to do. Why do they publish songs and, how to go about it properly. Bravo! You're well on your way to doing just that by learning and assimilating the info I share with you in here. Now, with that being said, I'd like to point out something that should be obvious to any songwriter trying to get their songs published or recorded, but is usually overlooked. Okay, so you know how I already mentioned that most writers don't listen to the radio because they don't like the kinds of songs they play on there anymore? Well, that very thing that you don't like listening to, e.g. the radio, regardless of whether you like it or not, is the very template of what you should be trying to write song-wise if you're trying to get published and, on the radio. Why? Well, there's a reason those particular songs are being played, regardless of what you, as a songwriter of substance, might think. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the songs or how well they were written, pitched, or recorded. Those shitty songs are being played ad nauseum to attract a particular demographic of listener to the station that's playing them. Why? So the people listening to the kind of music they like will get to hear the commercials that are aimed at that particular demographic between songs. You see, radio exists and makes its money by selling ad time to advertisers who want to get their products in front of a particular demographic. There's that word again. So did you ever notice that if you're listening to, say, a country station, all the ads are about Boot Barn, some country line dance club, or Tractor Supply store? Do you think that's by accident? Hell no. Or if you just happen to like classical music and you're listening to Beethoven on the radio, all of a sudden you'll hear an ad for a jewelry store, or a Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, they're targeting their ads to a very specific group of listeners and demographic. That's how they make their money. The radio stations, that is, by selling ad time to the merchants who want to reach that station's particular listenership. The reason I'm explaining all this to you is so that you'll be aware of why there are radio formats to begin with. And each of them have their own chart in Billboard magazine. Think about it. Country, adult contemporary, rock, news radio, sports, classical, pop, folk, NPR, etc. They're segmented to reach and attract a very specific audience, listenership, or again, demographic, so that merchants can peddle their wares to that demographic. Believe it or not, the music is only considered to be a necessary evil that the radio station actually has to pay us songwriters and publishers to use to attract that listenership. That will hopefully attract advertisers who want to reach that particular group of people. Okay, so now that you're aware of that, let's pick one genre in particular and discuss why they're playing the types of songs they're playing. This is really important to understand, and hopefully it'll help you see why you need to make peace with the radio, quote unquote. Let's take country music, for instance. Okay, so as you've probably noticed, country music has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. It used to be you'd hear Willie Nelson, Garth Brooks, Patsy Cline, Hank Williams, Reba McEntire, and all the old school country stars on the radio singing great, well-crafted songs about life, love, loss, drinking, cheating, etc., Songs written about the stuff that makes up real life. And the format was aimed at middle-aged or older people. So the songs reflected realities that the listener could relate to because they had lived long enough to have experienced the situations and emotions the artists were singing about. And talk about a great demographic to market to. I mean, these were listeners who were working, had money to spend on things, and were basically fans of the format and their favorite artists for life. Just so long as the radio kept playing artists who were singing songs about real-life situations that they, the listeners, could relate to. They were fans of the format and the artists forever. Rarely, or, does an old school country fan say, switch to another format of music. Talk about a captivated and loyal audience to market to. Whew. Okay, so what happened that changed the music so dramatically? So much so that, nowadays country music is nothing more than a mix of rock, pop, hip hop beats, and seemingly shallow, meaningless lyrics. Well, enter globalization. What is that, you ask? Yeah, well, here's the kicker. You see, believe it or not, country music outside of news radio, talk radio, is the biggest radio format in the world. More people listen to country music than any other type of music on the radio. Check it out, it's true. Anyway, as it became more and more popular all over the world, organizations like the CMA, the Country Music Association, and the ACM, Academy of Country Music, decided because it's their job to grow the fan base of the genre throughout the world to see what they could do to find a larger audience than what they already had. And some might call it greed. Just saying. Anyway, the bean counters in the back room realized that the audience of older listeners around the world was closing in on checking out, if you know what I mean. So they realized they better find a new audience to like the country format before it went the way of the dinosaurs. I mean, after all, if the demographic died off, who would radio be able to sell their advertising to, and what would happen to them without that income? As an aside, the answer actually is the very reason one day your favorite rock station, say you'd listened to your whole life, suddenly turned into a news radio station, right? What? We're losing our listenership? Quick, let's change into something a whole lot of people will probably want to tune in and listen to so we can sell them stuff for our advertisers. Yep, that's the reality of it, from the radio station owner's seat anyway. Kind of weird put that way, huh? But back to our story about why did country change so dramatically and what does that have to do with you as a songwriter? So like I said, the bean counters realized that they were losing their very large audience of older listeners to the grave. So what did they do? They realized that by making country music more kid-friendly, quote unquote, they'd attract a brand new audience of younger people, who they could market to for years. I know, bummer, right? But from their seat, it's just business. One that they're trying to keep alive and at the level, they've gotten accustomed to over the last 80 or 90 years or so. So artists and labels stopped cutting the songs that would make sense to the older demographic and started recording songs that the younger generation could relate to, for all the reasons I mentioned above. Is that a good thing? Well, it all depends on how you look at it and where you sit in the music industry, radio, songwriter, food chain. For radio, it's a no-brainer. Give us songs the kids will tune in to hear, and we're all good. Everybody's happy. As far as the record labels are concerned, as long as anyone is buying their products, they're happy. Hallelujah. But as a songwriter, you've got to stop and be aware of all those things, so that you can understand why that great heartfelt song you've just written about back in the day, is no longer a viable player in their world. At least on the radio, that is. That's not to say you couldn't get it in a film or a commercial or something like that. But those options aside, think about this for a minute. So we're basically writing for the younger radio listener now, right? Well, when you're young, you live your life looking forward to everything you haven't experienced in life yet. Sex, love, driving a fast car, having your own place, making $1 bazillion, etc. That's exactly the mindset of the demographic listening to today's country music. They're looking forward to their life. And singing along to songs on the radio by artists who understand and are living and know that mentality. We're young, free, and we're going to own the world. Yay! Remember feeling and thinking like that? Yeah. But chances are, you and I, who've spent a lifetime writing great songs, about things we've already experienced, are singing about, things the current crop of listeners couldn't care less about because it has absolutely nothing to do with their reality or life. Again, think about it. Just like when you were a kid and you couldn't stand listening to your parents' music. You had your own music that spoke to things that you cared about, and your parents hated it too. It's a generational thing that, as it were, quite normal but nonetheless real. And exceedingly important if you're a songwriter trying to get your songs published, recorded, and on the radio today. In short, you've got to go back in your memories and write from a place of wonderment with life, as opposed to writing from experience. Pretty deep, huh? Makes sense, though. It's a physiological reality that they cannot ignore, just like you couldn't ignore it when you were their age. So they live in a constant state of anxiety and heightened sexual drive. Remember that old test they did back in the 1960s? Where they determined that once you hit puberty, you literally think about sex every 7 seconds. Well, I'll bet that if you're a little older, you probably don't think about sex every 7 seconds anymore. Unless you're a creeper or something. Point being, as we age, the constant desire for sex diminishes while those younger listeners are literally being driven by it. So again, go back in your mind and bathe yourself in memories of being a sexually driven physical being. Because if you want to play the game and write songs on their level, you'll have to be in the same physical frame of mind, at least, as they are. Okay, so I can hear you now saying, how the hell am I supposed to go back in time and write from a place I haven't been in for like 20 or 30 years? Oddly enough, the answer is pretty simple. Listen to the radio. Yeah, those shitty songs being written and sung by kids who haven't got a clue about life as you know it to be, they're singing about stuff that's new to them. But remember, you were them once and you need to be, or at least think like that old again if you want to get on their radar. You can do that by listening to the radio and actually noticing what they're caring about in the lyrics to their songs. Stuff they're now experiencing for the first time in their lives. As I said, sex, drugs, rock and roll, as it were. Why? Because they are today's radio and the future. If you truly want to get published and on the radio making money with your songs, you'll have to embrace that truth. You can either write from a youthful and wonderment point of view, or you can write your great songs about life and stuff that just doesn't matter to publishers, artists, labels, and radio, who are trying to reach the current crop of upcoming listeners so that they can keep their format alive. So which will it be? Make a conscious decision to decide. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't write, your great songs from the things you've experienced in life. Believe me, I do it all the time, and that's where the truly great songs come from. But I can speak from first-hand experience when I say that I could easily play you well over 100 songs, that would have you asking me, who cut that? And my answer would be, no one. I've literally got thousands of good to great songs just collecting dust on my hard drive. Why? Because it took me a long time to realize that I was writing about the past, when what I should have been doing was writing about a future I didn't know about existed yet, as a young writer. Close your eyes and go back in time to when you were young. Can you see it? Can you feel it? Yeah, you can. Right there are the feelings that'll give you a song that will connect with today's listeners. That's what they've got that you don't, or think you don't. Youth. And a wide-eyed innocence about the realities of life yet to come. So go back in your mind, bathe in memories of back before you knew what love was, or back when the coolest thing in the world was putting baseball cards in the spokes of your bike wheels. Or as they might do today, looking forward to mom or dad getting a new iPhone so that their old phone would become yours. I cannot stress the point enough about the difference between them as writers and us as writers. They look and write, they look and write with their lives forward, while we remember our lives and write backwards. Want to get your songs published, recorded, and on the radio? Then write your songs forward. And listen to the radio. But hey, another great idea, is to go back and listen to songs you wrote when you were younger. Chances are you didn't know how to write them as well as you would now, but they probably have great ideas in them. I mean, you have been keeping all your lyrics and songs since you first started writing, haven't you? Or am I the only nut who does that? I've still got songs I wrote in 8th grade lying around, and I'll bet you do too if you just go looking for them. That young, innocent, pissed-off kid you used to be probably wrote some great ideas down and just didn't know how to craft a great song back then. Pull them out and go through them. I'll bet you'll be pleasantly surprised at how fresh your ideas were back then. Hey, if nothing else, it'll give you a chance to take a stroll down memory lane and maybe get yourself in the right mindset to start coming up with those fresh ideas again. Other than that, listen to the radio if you want to get published and if that's where you ultimately want your songs to end up. All the bitching in the world isn't going to make that happen. You have to make it happen with a change of attitude and outlook on what it really is. And you can do that by making peace with the radio. Okay, that's it for now, and I truly hope I get to hear you on the radio. Stay young forever as a songwriter. Use all the knowledge you've acquired over the years to turn an innocent thought into a universal emotional kick in the face for the listener. Go on, give it a try. Okay, go right ahead. Starter. Feminoo. Out. See ya.